We
Welcome back.
should be here now. I hope. I mean, go for
Can
it.
I start?
Sure.
Welcome back, everybody, to Buzz City Breakdown. God, we can never get the live starts on these things right.
It
I
is
must say,
difficult. It
Albert.
is difficult.
That's okay. A countdown, Albert, maybe would have helped. Instead of saying, "Oh, it's ready." You could be talking about the position of your hat, your
Okay.
headphones, your mic.
Come on now.
Could have been anything about the video. Anyways, welcome in, everybody. We're live here on YouTube. This will also be available as a VOD on the live section of our YouTube channel at Charlotte Hornets on SI on YouTube, where you can follow, like, subscribe. Not follow on YouTube, but essentially subscribe. Same thing. Helps us out. It's free. Doesn't cost you anything. Doesn't send an email to you. It's just helping us out. Continue to do this every day. We are writers for the Charlotte Hornets on SI website. You can find our work over there at Hornets on SI. If you look that up on Google, you will find our work. You can go to our author pages, find us there. You can also find our show every day on Spotify for an audio-only option if you need that there, as well as the podcasts section of our playlists on our YouTube channel. If you go to our channel, go to the playlist section, there's a playlist for podcasts that Albert sets up and uses every single day. Otherwise, we got a schedule release to talk about today, guys. So here's the way this is going to work today. So we're not going to go crazy in depth today. What Albert and I have done, we've chosen an easiest stretch of the schedule. We've also chosen a hardest sketch of the schedule. One of them was easy to agree on between Albert and I. The other not so easy. Despite the fact it was the easiest part of the schedule. Regardless, we're getting there. We're going to start with the easiest part of the schedule. We'll work our way to the hardest part of the schedule. We have a really nice graphic that Albert and I are pretty proud of that we'll put up here for you shortly, so you can see both of those 12 game stretches that we have ready for you guys to talk about today. And then this weekend, after our off day tomorrow on Friday, which if you don't know, we go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday during the week, and we go Saturday, Sunday during the weekend, off Monday and Friday, at least for the summer. That could change as the season starts, so stay tuned in that department. But for this weekend, we will do a further in-depth schedule breakdown where we talk about every game, I think is what our plan is, Albert. We'll do, we have these slides that are 12 games each. We'll make a slide for the whole schedule, and we'll talk it through, give a record prediction. That's kind of our goal for this weekend after our off day on Friday. So something to look forward to for this weekend. But today, we're going to do an easiest stretch of the schedule. I really am not doing great with this alliteration today. And then we have a hardest stretch of the schedule. The easiest of which we will start with, Albert. So before we get to our stretches of the schedule and the house cleanings out the way, as I like to say, how are you doing, bud? You have a hat on today. It's weird.
I mean, don't give me any flack for it. I prefer not to wear one, but didn't have a choice today. My hair didn't comply with what I wanted to do, so you're gonna have to live with this for today. If you come to this show for my hairdo, then probably you shouldn't be here in the first place.
I would have expected some form of hat that had some kind of, basketball team on it. Maybe an
No.
Alba Berlin hat. Maybe
Nope.
no,
It's a
just
fish.
a fish.
Yeah, it's a fish.
It's
It's a fish. It's a sketch of a fish. After you've been talking about the sketch of a schedule for about 2 minutes,
stretchable. Oh man.
I've brought a
You
sketch of a
copied
fish.
my incorrect phrasing better than I was able to actually
Yes.
say the actual word. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about the easiest stretch of the schedule first, starting with Brooklyn on November 4th. Again, nationally televised games we'll talk about later on down the line. I do want to mention here before we get too deep into this again, something I said at the very end of yesterday's episode. We have free Hornets basketball if you live in, the area of Charlotte. Now, I'm not sure for somebody like me who lives in South Carolina, like how that will affect, like how far does the range go, or are they going to be locally available here? Is it the same range of Fox Sports South back in the day? Or is it just limited to people who have access to Channel 9 in Charlotte? I don't know yet. But regardless, for the people who are in the area, get Channel 9 WSOC. Like, that's so huge. Something I don't want to look over. Something I've been begging the Hornets to do for just years now. It's the reason I'm a fan, because as somebody who lived 2 hours outside of the city, like, I had a cable box and I could watch the Hornets. Something I said at the end of the episode yesterday. So shout out to Gabe Plotkin. Shout out to Rick Schnall. This is probably my favorite move they've made as owners yet, and it's not something to be overlooked. And it's something they're taking a loss on. I'm going to be so honest with you guys. Like, they are taking a monetary loss to do this, and they're doing it for the fans, and that's what they should do. And because it's going to make them a bigger premier franchise in the end, because kids everywhere who otherwise wouldn't be able to watch the Hornets or go to Hornets games will become fans now, and that's what it's all about, man. Shout out to those guys. So let's jump into this easiest stretch of the schedule, starting with November 4th against Brooklyn, my birthday. Also then going to you play at Brooklyn on the 4th. You play Boston and Cleveland at home on the 6th and the 9th. You play Phoenix on the 12th. On the road, you play the Clippers on the road on the 15th. You play the Lakers on the road on the 17th, and then the Hawks on the road on the 20th. Now, I want to say before we continue down the rest of this, this is where Albert and I really struggled to pick a part of the schedule. There's a later half of this stint. So, for reference, this Brooklyn to Boston, stretch that you've seen on the screen is Game 9 to what would we say, Albert? Game 20, correct?
Yes, correct.
And that's ultimately what we agreed on. But what really made me hesitant about picking this stretch was the 4-game, road stretch with Phoenix, with LAC, with the Lakers, with Atlanta. But it's not a full-out West Coast road trip, and that's ultimately why Albert sold me here. Phoenix is a good team. I think that honestly may be the hardest game. You could say the Lakers, but I don't know. I think Phoenix is probably a better all-around team, but they have to deal with a superstar in Luka. Booker's getting a little bit older, so that will be harder in its own right. But then on your last game of this road stand, you're at least coming back east. You're getting off of that West Coast time zone mentality, playing against the Hawks in Atlanta, just 2 hours away from home. And then you have a 3-day break until you start a 4-game homestand, where the Hornets play the Grizzlies on the 23rd, the Bulls on the 25th, the Nets on the 28th, and the Wizards on the 30th, all at home before going on the road to Boston before the NBA Cup and knockout stage break for a few days in the NBA. Now, whether the Hornets make it there or not is to be determined. I should also add that within this stretch, at Atlanta and Chicago at home on the 25th, as well as Boston on the road on the 6th, there are 3 NBA Cup games in this stretch of the schedule. So I don't know that we really took that into account as picking this part of that, but does that change your calculus at all, Albert, the fact that there's 3 NBA Cup games in here?
It doesn't, especially...
I didn't think it would.
Because you're talking about opponents that aren't that good. And if you're going to play... Who was it? Brooklyn was one of the teams, right?
Not in the NBA Cup. The NBA Cup games are Boston on the road, or Boston at home on the 6th, then at Atlanta on the 20th, and then Chicago at home on the 25th.
Chicago. If you're going to play Chicago, you should beat them. And it being an NBA Cup game and them maybe having an extra bit of motivation shouldn't be any excuse to lose that game. So it doesn't really make a difference. I guess you can argue in the Boston game, especially because Boston will definitely not win a championship this year. They might try even harder in the NBA Cup.
Fair.
Could make a case for that one, I guess. But otherwise, I think this was the part of the schedule that I really thought was the easiest, and I kind of had to talk Owen into it. But I think you really have almost no unwinnable games on here. You're definitely going to lose against Boston, one of them for sure. Maybe both. You're probably losing to Cleveland. Phoenix.
At least it's at home, though, against Cleveland.
Yeah.
At least in that one of the Boston games are at home,
It is. And then you face the Suns, the Clippers, and the Lakers, which are all dangerous enough to where you can lose one, possibly 2 of those games, but you can definitely win 2 as well, and you could even win out. Like that's not a 3-game West Coast stint that's unwinnable. Phoenix is a solid team that can really hurt you offensively, but they also have a lot of flaws defensively. Their big man rotation, if Mark Williams isn't healthy, is really in flux. You don't know what you're getting out of Kaman Malwak yet. With the Lakers,
will be Bridges' first game playing against the Hornets, for what it's worth.
It will be.
At the schedule, that's Bridges'
and
first game playing back
I
against
mean,
the Hornets.
that's another point for the Hornets. I will say that much. LA, the Clippers aren't good. They, especially if they get rid of Kawhi at that point. They have Brandon Ingram. They have Darius Garland. They have Benedict Mathurin if he's still there. Again, that's a team that can do stuff offensively, and that can, if they get hot, if Ingram has a good night from the mid-range, if he gets to spots, they can be dangerous. I'm not saying that's a free win, but it's definitely a game where the Hornets could could get a win realistically. And then the Lakers game as well. You have to deal with Doncic, and they have brought in Walker Kessler, who I think will be really good for them. But then you're looking at what else is there behind those two. You have Austin Reeves, and then it gets to Quentin Grimes. It gets to Colin Sexton, another former Hornet they'll see on this road trip. It gets to Sandro Mamukelashvili, and that's not as dangerous, in my opinion, as maybe some of the Lakers teams in recent years have been, even though they've always had depth issues, but this team really is very offensive minded. And if you find a way to take away, the stuff that Doncic likes to do, which is obviously incredibly difficult, and I mean, Colin Sexton, Mamu Kalashvili, those are guys that can get hot, but are not reliable scorers. And
Moose is going to be a problem for Kessler, too, in my opinion.
Defensively, that team is pretty weak, I would say. Kessler is a good defensive big, but he's going to have to cover for a lot of weaknesses otherwise. And so I think that 3-game West Coast road trip is really doable, and then you get back to the East Coast to Atlanta, and that's another game in a similar vein where Atlanta is a solid team, but they aren't unbeatable in any way or form.
I was just going to say real quick, like before you kept going down, because I want to hear what you say about the rest of these. At the very least, what helped me come over to your side on this, because my caveat was my stretch was still within this range that Albert's at right now. I was just 15 to 20, what was it? 26, 27, 15, 27, like I think it was. Yeah. But OKC was in there. Philadelphia was in there, albeit both of those games
Toronto was in there
during a 5-game ropes. Yeah, 5-game homestand, but it was Toronto, OKC, Philadelphia's 3 of those 5 games in the homestand. So, you have the NBA Cup break, but I like that Albert's stretch ended right there before that break, ultimately. Important to note, another thing that I was getting to about the West Coast road trip, none of those Phoenix, LAC, or Lakers games are back-to-backs, which is huge, especially against the LA teams, you know what I mean? And then another thing to note about Boston is that's their second NBA Cup game. They play again at Washington on October 30th. And, Boston, thank God it's at home. I think Washington is very winnable in your first NBA Cup game in Game 6 on the road.
Not very winnable. They should win that one.
If they beat Boston on the 6th, I think that sets them up incredibly well to finally get to the knockout. So, Boston is at home, and it's early in this stretch, but that might be the most important game in this stretch to win. If that's the game they can nab out of the 2 in this 12 of playing against Boston in Charlotte at the Spectrum Center in their second NBA Cup game, I think that'll be massive. But please continue down the schedule.
Yeah, but the Boston games are always a good benchmark, even when Boston isn't as good of a team. Maybe they have lost some depth, and you can definitely pose the question if Paul George can play regularly, or if he will play, let's say, 60 games. It is at the start of the season, so we will probably see him in both games. Nevertheless, they don't have the depth and the versatility that they had in recent years when they were contenders. They don't have Porzingis anymore. They don't have Horford anymore. They still have.
It's gonna be young and spry going into that game too. You know what I mean?
You could argue. So I think, nevertheless, what I'm trying to get to, Boston always plays the right way, or at least they play their way. And you could see that last season when there was one game I remember very vividly where everybody was kind of hyping up the Hornets, and the Celtics had just gotten Tatum back.
I don't remember
but
exactly which game you're talking
they
about.
had no one else. They didn't have Jaylen Brown. They were missing a couple of other guys, and it really was Tatum, Pritchard, and then you were getting to Baylor Shireman, those types of players.
Did Tatum drop 40 in that game, something like that?
He scored a lot of points. And basically in that game, you could see the Hornets, I think, kind of approached it thinking, well, they only have about half of their team available. Let's just go in there and play our usual, type of ball, but maybe we don't have to try too hard. And Boston came in there, forced a lot of turnovers, really, really tightened up their defense. The Hornets struggled to generate good looks. Boston also turned the ball over almost never. I want to say.
Yeah, that was
I feel
crazy.
like they
Especially,
had,
I really think it was like Tatum's first or
yeah,
second game back. It was
it
one of the
was.
two for real.
I think they had about 2 turnovers in that game, and so Boston is always a good benchmark. Even this year, maybe they're not that good, but when you play against Boston twice, you will get at the very least one game where you're gonna be put to the test, and you will see if you can actually execute in a serious way against a team that will always execute in a serious way.
Right, one that has tons of experience, playoff experience, Tatum championship, finals
Mike
experience.
Conley is
Um,
incredibly experienced,
right,
of course.
right, and to get to this homestand, so Albert, we talked through the first, what was it, 7 of the schedule going to Atlanta, which is the last
Yep.
of the road games, the 4-game road stretch, and then you immediately turn back. They go after the at Atlanta game, the third NBA Cup game on their schedule. They go 2 hours, 2.5 hours up the road to Charlotte, 3 hours, whatever it may be, to Charlotte up I-85, and then they prep for a 4-game homestand. Which this 4-game homestand is ultimately what made me agree with Albert on this stretch, because after one of their easier road stretches of the season, they have a 6-game road stretch at the middle of January that is just brutal. At Portland, at Sacramento, at Golden State, at Utah, at Denver, at Dallas. Which some easier teams in there, but that's a lot of road games to play all in a row. I will say one of them is a back-to-back at Golden State at Utah. This 4-game road stretch doesn't even touch going out west for that long for an Eastern time zone team, especially with Atlanta being on the back end. But you start with Memphis on the 23rd, a team that people are excited about, will be honestly maybe one of the better defensive teams on this 12-game stretch. I'm gonna be so honest, outside of maybe Boston.
I think it's interesting that you say people are excited about them, because I think I'm neutral on them. They're obviously not going to be very good, but I have actually heard a lot of people be kind of down on them. Not necessarily criticizing trading away Ja Morant or Jaren Jackson Jr. I think those moves kind of made sense in the bigger picture, but I have seen a lot of people question if they even will be able to, reach the 12th spot in the standings next year. I see a lot of people who think they are very far away. I think they have the talent to definitely pose a threat, especially early on in the regular season. They have Kambuza, Zach Edey, Cedric Howard.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talent in that squad. It's just very, very raw.
Certainly a winnable game. My thing with Memphis is I think they are going to be a bad team because they don't have a real point guard. They don't have another wing to really help Cedric Howard out offensively. But Boozer is going to really eat up a lot of shot clocks offensively for them and make stuff happen for Coward, and have Edey beside him. Like, they're going to be a tough out on certain nights where Boozer's scoring a lot of points, Coward's got his offensive game going, Edey's getting offensive rebounds. Like, on those nights, they will be able to beat better teams, but the nights that their offense is just non-existent, they're going to get blown out. This is a game that Charlotte just can't go in underestimating, because it's Memphis and they can win this game for sure.
The Hornets did super well last season against those kind of teams where
Great point.
They come in and they can hurt you potentially, but if you lock them down defensively, they don't really have any answers. They did this to the Pacers, I think, multiple times last season, where Indiana had some upset wins last year, even with all of their injuries. They beat Golden State once. They beat the Hornets once. But in the latter half of the season, the Hornets had, I think, 2 games against the Pacers where, there was still a bit of fear, anxiety around, these are the Charlotte Hornets at the end of the day, and maybe they will lose this some way or form. But they didn't, because they just played very solid defense. And if you face these kind of teams where no one can create for themselves at a high level reliably, then you are almost guaranteed to win.
I would say, just to kind of finish out this homestand, because it's Chicago, Brooklyn, Washington before finishing our easiest stretch of the schedule pick, with Boston on the road. Again, not an NBA Cup game, of course. I will say, most times the Hornets have a big homestand like this. There's always one game in there that you're like, ugh, it's at home. But, just like the one that's a couple weeks later, right? They have Toronto at home, LAC, OKC, Portland, and Philadelphia. And that's 5 games where 3 of those teams easily are, better than Charlotte, and this one that's just not the case, especially an early season version of Washington. It's really going to benefit the Hornets that they get them 2 times before we even hit October, because that's 2 of the 4 done, and there's no chance the Wizards are going to have it figured out by the end of November, in my opinion. So I truly think there is a greater than 75% chance that the Hornets can go 4-0 in this homestand, which would be huge, and before October or December, excuse me, I said that a second ago, before December even rolls around.
Yeah, definitely. I'm fearful of making those kind of statements you just made, because
But I only made it because of who they're playing. Truly, I hesitate to make them too, but that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah, I was talking about the Washington one specifically, because if the Wizards beat the Hornets in that game, that you could just put what you said into an edit and it would look pretty bad for you. So in that sense,
do a show every day. That's going to happen so often, man.
In that sense, I will not make that statement, but I do think the Wizards, whether they have figured it out or not, they will never figure it out to a point where they are a good team defensively. They don't have the talent. It's just not possible, in my opinion. So even if they have figured it out, you can score 120 points at least.
If AD was 28, maybe, but then, he's not anymore. I think he's like 33, potentially 32, something like 31. He's definitely older than 30. Let me ask you this, and I'll give you a second to think about it, because I'm before we get to the hardest stretch of the schedule, which if you're just joining us live here recently, that's what we're doing. We just talked about our easiest 12-game stretch of the schedule. We're about to go into our 12 hardest game stretch of the season that Albert and I have unanimously agreed upon. And then this weekend, we're going to do a deeper, further in-season schedule dive where we go over all the games, give our record predictions, and etc. So today you're just getting the easiest and hardest stretches of the schedule that Albert picked. Again, for those of you just joining us. Let me get your record prediction for these 12 in this easiest part of the schedule, because right now I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 losses at like worst case scenario to me is 4 losses here. So I'm going to go with 8-4, I think is my gut reaction for this. But that would include, in my calculus, I have them losing both times to Boston as 2 of those 4.
I think 8-4 would be my worst case scenario. I think they have to.
Wow.
I would hope they get probably 9 wins out of this stretch. I think it's really a doable stretch. There's no team in here that is guaranteed to be a top 4 team in their conference. You can argue that about maybe the Lakers or the Cavaliers. I would be willing to argue about that, but the Celtics are gonna have a tough go at it. The Hawks, you could maybe see being at the perimeter of that range, but otherwise these are all lower half teams of their conferences. You have a good number of home games. I can see them losing 1 against Boston, and then out of the Suns, Lakers, Cavaliers, Hawks games, I can see them losing 2 of those, maybe 3, which would then bring it to 4, which I would also be fine with.
That's where my other 2 losses came from.
More than 4 would be distressing, in my opinion.
I agree with you, especially this early into the season. If this is our easiest pick and they lose more than 4, it is probably a call for concern for, again, like I've talked about a few times, just a few weeks later, and we'll dive into that stretch that's pretty difficult. Not our hardest stretch of the schedule pick. Our hardest stretch of the schedule pick, if Albert's prepared to pull that one up, is right. I can't remember. I got to scroll down to it. It's right at towards the middle of the season. At first, we were looking at one right at the end of the schedule.
It's at the end of January, from January 22nd to February 11th, from the Houston Rockets game to the Milwaukee Bucks game.
Yep, I got it pulled up now, and ultimately, this is right on the cusp of the All-Star break. The 11th would be the Hornets would have 3 more games before they take 7 days off for the All-Star break, if I'm not mistaken. They have the Rockets at home. They have the Celtics on the road again. They got the Magic at home, Spurs on the road, Wolves on the road, Lakers at home, Heat on the road, Celtics at home, Golden State at home, Toronto on the road, Knicks on the road, and then Milwaukee at home. Let me just go ahead and ask you this part of this question, Albert. My gut reaction to what are the easiest teams on this part of the schedule, Houston, Milwaukee, and you could and probably Golden State. The Lakers are definitely better than the Warriors, I'd say. But the Lakers would probably be my fourth worst team. So I'd go probably Milwaukee as the worst team on this. Houston is second. You could argue Golden State is second. Golden State for me is probably the third hardest team, and then the Lakers. The rest of these games are tough. I don't know. What do you think?
These are all tough in my opinion, apart from maybe the Milwaukee game. It remains to be seen.
I'm leaving out the Magic, to be fair. That's one of the easier ones on this, too.
Remains to be seen if Milwaukee can figure something out between Tyler Hero and Jaime Jaquez and Kelly Ware and Kevin Porter Jr., all of those good but not great guys that they have. The Magic game might come into consideration for me if they suffer an injury to one of their big three. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I think that's a really tough one. Same goes for Golden State. If they are healthy, if they have Stephen Curry, if they have Jimmy Butler, it's going to be a tough game. Anyways.
Same with Draymond. Yeah, even though they're old, they're still so talented and experienced.
And it's fair to assume that one of them will be injured maybe at that point, but we don't know that now, so I would count that one as a difficult one. I wouldn't even say Houston is easy. I think they have done really well acquiring Marcus Smart as a backup point guard. They also get back Fred VanVleet, who will be massive for them.
I keep forgetting VanVleet's coming back. That's such a good point.
And so that isn't an easy game either. Is the team chemistry good over there? I think maybe not so much, but on paper, that is a really good team if healthy as well. I think it's almost impossible to pick out an easy game here. There are none. I mean, you asked me this for the other one. I'm going to ask you this now. What would be your record prediction and what would you hope for if those maybe aren't the same for you?
If they get 4 wins out of this 12-game stretch, I think you got to be happy with that. Like, this is rough. I mean, to me, my immediate thoughts are Boston, you could probably beat one of those 2 times that you play them. Okay, so that's one win. You could compete with the Magic. That's potentially another. Milwaukee, you could definitely beat. Then Golden State, if there's an injury, you could potentially beat them. The Lakers are a wild card. But again, a lot has to go right for them to beat, all of those teams in this stretch. I feel like, injuries or Charlotte having to play well for all 5 of those. There's also a back-to-back to start this, and there's also a back-to-back on the 4th and the 5th at home. This is when the schedule starts. You're in the thick of the schedule. Like, this is one of the hardest parts of the schedule before the All-Star break. You look back to our easiest stretch of the schedule, there's multiple games, even on the road stint. Before they start that West Coast road trip, Albert and I talked about, they have 3 days before that first game on the road at Phoenix. After they play the one before Phoenix, right? But here, there's no long road stretch, but you play the Magic at home on the 25th after playing the Celtics on the 23rd and the Rockets on the 22nd. Okay, then you got to travel to San Antonio to play Wemby and the Spurs. 2 days later, you got to go play your only game in Minnesota and deal with Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball. And then you come all the way back home to Charlotte to play Luka Doncic. Then you have your division game against Giannis and the Heat. Like, this is tough. This is really, really tough. I really think 4 is my pick, but I think they could win 5. 6 is like absolute best case scenario. They get an upset win and win the games that they're just level with the teams on, like the Magic and the Warriors, etc.
I do want to say, first of all, we have Miami Sports 72 in the chat saying, "Hey, what's up, guys? What's up, Miami Sports 72? What's up?" I mean, we're going to talk about Miami now because I think that one will be really tough. All of the other ones will be really tough. Again, there's no easy game in this stretch. You're being optimistic, in my opinion.
Oh, I definitely am. I'm trying to, because I don't want to be the guy that says they go 2-10 in this stretch, but like that's a real possibility.
I feel like 2 would be my realistic guess, and then if I think 3 is possible, 4 is also possible, but for 4 it would take some injury luck. Let's say Giannis maybe is injured, or let's say Stephen Curry is injured. It's possible, but 4 would be a huge stretch. Even 3 would be. I would be happy with 3 out of this. that would be fine with me. And honestly, it's possible that they win one of these. It's very possible. This is you go through such a stretch, and there is no point of let up. That's the issue. Normally, you maybe go through a tough 5-game stretch, but then you have Washington once or Brooklyn once, and you can go into that game and kind of take out all of your frustrations on them.
Yeah.
But there is no such game in here. And if everybody's healthy in this stretch, you just will get battered again and again, and you'll have to hold up somehow, and that'll be really tough.
And I'll say for them to, at this point in the season, late in January, like, it's the other hard part about this for Charlotte is they're going to be relying on Steinbach a lot off the bench. We're assuming for sure, likely most of the season. I think he'd have to play incredible to overtake Musa and or Nas. I mean, honestly, I don't think he's got it in him this year. I think he's talented enough to do it eventually, but not this year. With that said, Christian Anderson Jr. Both of those guys are truly going to be struggling in this stretch, in my opinion. You know, it's past the point of, you know, I've been in the NBA for a minute now. We're in the thick of the schedule. Like we're past the 41 game point. When they start this stretch, let's see, at Houston on the 22nd. So that is game 44. Halfway through the season, you're coming up and you can see the All-Star break and those 7 days off, like staring you in the face, but you can't let up. And the way they get, you know, 3 to 5 wins, if God willing 6, is if Brandon Miller by this point is making an All-Star team.
Yes, that would be probably the only way that doesn't include injuries. Just to quickly give you some more info from the chat, because I think you're not seeing it right now. Miami Sports 72 is actually from Charlotte, probably something you wouldn't expect from someone who is called Miami Sports 72, but he says he will. Okay, I don't second that.
I'm just playing. Keep going.
He says he will be at one of the Miami games in Charlotte. So, I mean, that sounds like a fantastic time. You're probably a Heat fan, so I'm not sure I want you there, but have a solid time.
Well, he can't possibly get as unlucky as the Heat fans who came to the play-in game. So for what that's worth, like true. You guys may lose, but it won't be in such dramatic, gut-wrenching fashion at the very least. So we appreciate you being here. I do want to say on the Heat real quick.
Yes.
I've seen a lot of Eastern Conference rankings recently that have had them consistently at like 5 to 9. Like I think it's disgusting what people are doing with the Heat, like underrating, you know, Giannis's impact. Maybe it's because the Bucks have been bad the past couple years, but that had a, what's the right way to say this? There was more at play there. You know, it wasn't just the roster being bad and the coaching changes and the lack of.
There was a domino effect, you could say.
Mm-hmm. And you know, the relationship of him and the org and trying to get traded, but them wanting the right deal, but also wanting to do right by him. Like there was so much at play this year. And I expect us to see Giannis. I hesitate to say MVP level, but I think he's going to be one of the, you know, top 10 to 7 best players in the league this year again, bar none. I think he's going to have his best season in the past couple years. Same with Bam. Like, how do you have an 83-point game and not come into the season with Giannis on your team and not feel like you're one of the best players in the league?
Yes, but also, come on.
Yes, I'm talking about Bam, though, personally. Not my opinion, but if you're Bam, you have Giannis coming after you just had the
I'm sure
season
he's feeling confident, yeah.
Davion, too, you know, has been putting in a lot of work in the offseason, albeit in a weird way, walking the mountains with the monks. But
I really like Miami's team. I think my range for them would probably be 3 to 6. I think it's fair to be a bit concerned about their depth and injuries to Giannis possibly, but they have a lot of, you know, guys on the wings that are, I think, kind of interesting. I really like Pelle Larsson. I think he's going to be a really good wing in the league for years to come.
Is Fontecchio still there as well?
I'm not quite sure if they re-signed him. You can look that up while I read out another comment.
Keep going.
And This was from when I said that I assume they're going to win 2 of those 12 games. Titus Andronicus, 8432, who, if I remember correctly, is also German, writes most optimistic German. Which
Wow. That's funny he says that because
Come on.
You are quite pessimistic, Albert.
No,
I must say.
No, I'm really not. If you look at that stretch and you think we're going to come out of that with more than 3 wins,
I just
probably.
I just meant in general, not about that. Where I wasn't talking about the 12 game
Uh,
stretch.
I think you're wrong about that. Let's see how the season plays out. I will talk to you. I mean, I will talk to you probably almost every day, but I will especially talk to you after that stretch finishes, and we will see.
Dude, I want to say this. This is a real time like idea I meant to message you the other day. Something we're gonna do during the season. We're gonna do predictions for every single game.
Oh,
right?
definitely.
We're gonna
yes.
give our prediction for the
Yes.
game. We're gonna keep our records throughout the whole season.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
You think we had a crown on top of Albert's name because he won trivia once? You just wait till we get to the end of the season and have a champion based on a record. I'm gonna make Albert, stand up and introduce me not like I did the other day. Albert's gonna stand up with his microphone in his hand, and I'm gonna have an outfit on, walk into the room. I might RKO my dog or something just for the clip. You don't know what's gonna happen if I win that record outlook.
You might beat me in trivia. You might beat me again in trivia, but I will say this: I would say I'm a pretty good game predictor. You could say I have won many such prediction tournaments in the past at former workplaces with other
quite vague.
people. Yeah, you could say that. You wouldn't be wrong.
You could say the sky is green, but you'd also be wrong.
Well,
you know what I mean?
You wouldn't be wrong if you said what I said. That's all I'll say.
All right, let's finish. We gave our predictions for this hardest stretch of the schedule.
Yes.
We talked a lot more about the easiest, and I think there's just more to say there. But this really is. We're gonna look deeper into the schedule and see if we can't pick out any bits that we maybe think are as hard or compete with this potentially. But I think that's about going to do it for us today, guys. That's going to wrap it up. And this weekend, we're going to get to, again, a fuller, more straight-on schedule breakdown where we go into record predictions and all 82. We'll have them on the screen, the same as the overlays we got now. So look forward to that. We're off tomorrow. One of our 2 off days during the week. We're also off on Mondays as well. So you will have an episode from us Saturday and Sunday, but not tomorrow. So if you missed any of our last episodes, feel free to go back on our channel or on Spotify where you get our audio only option and check those past episodes out if you missed one yesterday and Tuesday. Otherwise, we appreciate you guys hanging out. Make sure you like and subscribe. As always, it helps us out. It's free. Don't cost you nothing. We really appreciate it. Leave your comments for next week's mailbag as well. We always take comments, even if we don't do something with it today. We will by the time the mailbag comes around next week. And with that said, that's going to do it for us, y'all. We appreciate y'all. I'm Owen. That's Albert. We'll see y'all to Saturday. Not tomorrow. Saturday.